Okay, so today we're gonna be responding to Hunter Avallone. I just had a debate with him, and while I think the debate kinda speaks for itself, I did pretty dog shit. So for context, I was just doing drugs in my room, shit-talking people over the internet. Yeah, no big surprise there. And while this was pretty uncalled for on my end, but I called him a grifter. Yeah, I'm not proud of it. That was pretty gay of me. But yeah, I said that, and that actually got under his skin, I guess, because I started taking to Twitter after that and basically said the same shit I was saying in his comments. And I added that I would love to debate him on anything. And well, he responded, let's fucking do this shit. And I was like, oh, holy shit, here we go. Let's fucking do this shit. So we're having a debate. What the fuck are we going to debate? I've been shit-talking this guy all morning, just poking fun at him here and there for saying dumb things throughout his videos, but I wasn't really sure what I should debate him on, because most of the substance of what I was saying was really just, you're fucking lame and a grifter, so I was like, you know what? I'm going to get off my bed, I'm going to stop doing drugs, and I'm going to try to sober up while I figure out what the fuck to tell him, and that's exactly what I did. Now, that didn't go too well. As you know, I tend to ramble a lot. I think the guy kind of figured I was done making my point halfway through me speaking, like half the time, because I kind of sound like a fucking retard, let's be real. And so he'd start responding to it, then I'd be trying to remember the rest of what I was going to say while listening to his response. And look, so this might sound like me coping that I lost. No. You want to seek hope? Here's my whole dissertation that I posted on my second account as soon as he released his video with that debate. Yeah, you see this shit? Yeah, that's cope right there. Yeah, I'm not sure why I had to post this ramble on my second account though. It seemed to go on good terms after that debate. I apologized to him and he said it's cool. But yeah, I can't fucking comment on his shit now. Fucking great. But yeah, I thought I'd quickly summarize the contentions I still had with him. I felt like I didn't get to fully respond, and again, my thoughts were all over the place. So here we go, boys.
There's different implications here, right? So obviously when you make a more homophobic joke, gay people are minorities. So therefore, it's less likely that the majority has come in contact with a gay person. So when you hear a homophobic joke, that only reinforces stereotypes of people that others might have no other context to compare to. They may have never met a gay person, so when they hear these jokes, that's all that they really know about gay people, enough so to form a very bigoted opinion. Most likely, everybody in the country has met a white person. They have some kind of a reference to look back on and compare to. Not everybody has that when it comes to minorities, and that right there is why there is far more of a possibility of harm for homophobic jokes versus jokes about white people or something. And I know that I've already kind of read some of your tweets, and I know that you think that's very stupid, and you think what I'm saying is that, well, since nobody knows what gay means, if they hear a joke about the gay, they might think that gay means AIDS. Oh no, that's not my argument. My argument is actually that media shapes opinions, and you can't deny that. Therefore, jokes that consistently disparage minorities, that ends up doing more of a harm.
Now, I really should have pressed him on that, because if you look at his list of sources he referenced right before the debate for that specific point, when he says media shapes opinion, this is in the context of the media, not comedians. And how do they shape racist narratives? Well, by overrepresenting the black population in criminal activity. So, say each time a black person commits a crime, you're going to put that in, but if a white person does the same thing, you're just going to ignore it, and then people end up seeing criminals on TV always being black. Yeah, so that's what he was talking about. Now, that's not what I was talking about. I was talking about jokes. That is not a joke. When the media does that shit, it's not a joke. And no shit that's going to contribute to racial stereotypes, because these are legit the most established authority figures people look up to for information, and they're pushing false narratives and racial stereotypes by intentionally distorting people's perception of reality to fit a racial image that paints black people in a bad light. And then they're making that their news coverage. Like, that straight up couldn't be a worse response to what I said. He originally said the reason why it's wrong to make a homophobic joke was because people don't really know what gay people are. So if you make that joke, that's all they have to go on. At least I thought that's what he said. So when he told me that's not what he meant, I was confused. And then he went on this tangent about the media, as if that was remotely related to what I was talking about, and I just let it slide. Nah. If you don't know anything about a group, and then all you hear about it is someone intentionally pushing distorted information meant to bring clicks and bait people into race hatred, that's going to influence your opinion because that's what this shit is designed to do. Was if you hear a joke made about a group that's meant to parody discrimination against that group, hence a racist joke, again, if it's not meant to parody racism, it's not a racist joke. Even if you laugh at the end, it's just a racist comment with you laughing. There's no world where these two are remotely the same thing. There's no world where you hear, hey, what's the difference between a Jew and a pizza? The pizza doesn't scream when you put it in the oven. And your response to that is, oh, I guess I kinda hate Jews now. Like, okay, whatever, moving on. For example, with AIDS, so you were like, okay, well, if people hear that, like, gay people have AIDS, well, they're gonna be like, oh, well, gay people have AIDS, maybe I should stay away from them. Like, can't you use just critical thinking skills? Like, I'm guessing if you arrive to that conclusion from that joke, that like, oh, gay people have, maybe I should stay away from them, doesn't that kind of assume that you already have a preconceived notion that is biased against gay people?
Yes,
Like,
and
that would be your takeaway from that joke?
Yes, and that's part of the problem, though, is that the audience or the audience to which you're delivering these jokes to is incredibly crucial, because when there are people that might already hold bigoted views, when they hear jokes that disparage minorities, they do take that as a acceptance, as normalizing that kind of behavior.
So yeah, I guess I kinda asked the wrong question there. I said, yeah, if you hear this joke and this is your takeaway, isn't there already some bias you have going in? Now what I should have said is, if you hear that joke and that's your takeaway, aren't you kind of a fucking moron?
There is an epidemic going on within the gay community. And no, I'm not talking about AIDS.
I know I thought at the time I was being funny, but that is the exact kind of joke that furthers homophobic stereotypes. For people who have not met gay people, then they have no point of reference when they hear something like this. When you make jokes of this nature, it's far more likely to reinforce in people's mind, yeah, I guess gay people are more likely to have AIDS. I guess gay people do have AIDS, huh? We should probably stay away from them. They're probably diseased. They're probably gross.
Because you'd imagine that if your content creator shares your views and thinks that's a genuine point against gay people, you wouldn't just leave that there as a side tangent. If gay people and AIDS is a genuine concern, you wouldn't just make a joke about it and move on in a video slamming gay people. So just the fact you're poking fun at them for that, yeah, the only rational takeaway here is that you're just bringing up this dead meme to trigger people. And if someone thinks, oh, wow, this non-point is actually pretty good, you don't have to worry about shit like that happening. What you should be worried about is the other thing you pointed out, which is your overall point in this video revolved around the idea that the snowflake behavior was representative of the gay community as a whole, which, as you rightfully corrected yourself, it was not. Yeah, and you also said that which was false, but the difference is there wasn't a joke. So homophobic people, that's gonna be their takeaway, because if they then go and repeat that, that's gonna resonate with people. Whereas if you go around saying gay people spread AIDS, people are just gonna look at you like, yeah, that's pretty gross. What the fuck, man? So that's the part of your video that's gonna contribute to hatred. The AIDS thing, yeah, nobody fucking cares, dude.
And I have this study here. I'd like to read it really quickly from the APA. And it talks about how genuine prejudices are not directly expressed, but instead they're restrained by beliefs, values, and norms that suppress them. Prejudices are expressed when justifications release suppressed prejudices. And jokes can oftentimes be a justification to release those suppressed prejudices.
Dude, suppressed prejudice. Dude, I have like, I have no idea what that means. Could you elaborate on what?
Okay, yeah, so there are some people, like what you said, who are already bigoted, right? They already hold bigoted beliefs.
Yeah.
So when they hear jokes, like my old video, like, oh, you know, the epidemic of gay people and AIDS, right? LOL. When they hear that, they view that as a justification to release some of their prejudiced views that they were previously suppressing. Because the joke provides a hypothetical safe space for that person to feel comfortable enough to kind of reveal their own biases and whatnot.
Again, racist jokes aren't meant to feel like a safe space to just go like, well, you know what? Fuck it, dude. I guess since you're all making fun of racist people, this should be a great time for me to come out as a racist. Yeah, again, if your racist jokes aren't painting racism in a bad light, I don't see how people could see that as a safe space unless your joke just didn't land and wasn't funny or wasn't a joke. Unless maybe you're not really joking, you're just trolling and that racist person's got antisocial problems, which if they're racist, who fucking knows, dude, maybe. Yeah, that's fair actually. You know what? Good fucking point. If you stretch the content of what we're actually talking about with this would actually make sense, yeah, I guess that would be a good fucking point. Anyway. Okay, so from there, the conversation kind of shifted to what makes a joke unacceptable. Now remember, the whole debate was based on this video where he condemned some random dude I've never heard the name of for making 3 homophobic jokes. Again, supposedly these were homophobic jokes, but my case would be, are these jokes? Are these okay to make? Well, I don't know. The answer to that second one really only comes down to whether or not what he said should be interpreted as a joke, or whether it was really just a derogatory comment. And the problem was he never cited any of these or their context, so when we pivoted to that whole bullshit, I just really wanted to know the context so we could discuss it. Now his argument was that the joke goes too far because it has a slur in it, and my main point against that would be, do you know what a homophobia or racism joke is? Yeah, you're trying to parody the discrimination, so yeah, you're going to want to use slurs because you're using slurs. Doesn't that make homophobia or whatever look even worse? But actually his whole contention was, yeah, nah, it's just not cool to use the slurs. That's just fucked up. So that's a whole can of worms we gotta open, because you see 2 different types of slurs and we only got to go over one of them. So let's go over the one we didn't go over first, the F word. So I'm from, use the F slur pretty much like you'd use the B word, just as an insult, and nobody even means it in the context of gay people. Now interestingly, the B word, right, what is that? One is literal interpretation, that's derogatory towards women. Okay, well, let's be clear, the F slur, as used by the person in his video, wasn't saying it in that context, so they're obviously not off the hook. But my point here is that words do evolve over time. Same for the N-word, and that's the one I actually went over the specifics of, so I think we're just gonna keep listening and that's gonna come up sooner or later. But yeah, since I'm sure that's what probably most of you clicked on this video to see, here's a timestamp of that shit.
So
by
Kevin
the way,
Hart, just to be clear, I know you said you didn't know much about him, but I was talking about tweets he had made that he was claiming were jokes, but they included homophobic slurs in them.
yeah.
That's
yeah,
a bit
and
of a
so-
stretch from just like, oh, he made a little joke.
And have you never heard of like a racist jokes that involves like
I
the
have, but I'm
N-word or-
talking about why those kinds of jokes can be incredibly damaging. Here's another really interesting study on how the media helped change public views about lesbian and gay people. So if the media can play a positive role in improving people's perception, it can also play a negative role. Therefore, when you have massive media personalities like Kevin Hart making racist jokes to an audience of millions, how many people in that audience might take that as validation?
Look, I know I said I was done with this shit. Let me jump in one more time here. So yeah, this Kevin Hart, does he represent the media? When you say the media played a role in this, the example your own source used last time for how the media helped shape racism is the news people actually painting a bad image by distorting information and pushing it as real. Again, no clue why he says this shit over and over again about the media. Okay, back to that shit. So what I'd say to all of that is, I think that in general, you tend to understand, like, there was a point, I don't know, I think racial hatred, there's obviously with black people, the only discrimination there would be against them, the only way where they would be marginalized is the fact that we had desegregation just like 2 generations ago. So obviously if my grandfather was like Bill Gates or something, I'd be way more likely to live an easy life as opposed to like if my grandparents didn't even get to participate in the system, like the meritocracy system we have, they didn't get to do any of that because they were segregated. Like, of course there'd be this problem, but in general, I feel like we've moved away as a society from racism. And I think when like the marker that shows you that, oh well, we're moving on as a society from hating those types of people is when it becomes okay to just make jokes about that. Like, I don't know, when I was in...
But hold on, sorry to cut you off, but there's also something to remember, that there are some marginalized groups that are in an awkward position in society where they are moving away from being discriminated against and moving instead to being fully accepted.
So here, Hunter actually ended up bringing a pretty decent point to the table on that later on that I didn't know about, which is that Well, there was a study involving 11,000 people who submitted fake applications, and this was done in 2 different cities, both in the north, where there's supposedly less racism, and they found that on average, people with very black-sounding names were almost 30% more likely to not get a call back than people with names like John. Now, all this is important because, yeah, this joke I brought up earlier. What's the difference between a Jew and a pizza? Yeah, if you had said that back when they had just freed the concentration camps, that would be pretty different. Like, if you're making fun of the Holocaust right after it just happened, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you're not even funny, you're just a mental retard. So yeah, I think a big thing that justifies making racist jokes now is that racism is in the past. You can pretend to be racist to troll around or make jokes about it. Nobody's even alive to remember the horrors of slavery. You're all good. Nobody's gonna think you're a racist because who the fuck even still is? And by the way, I think it's perfectly fair to apply that to trans people because they weren't just discriminated against in the past. It's actually pretty common on mainstream TV to hear people saying that trans people just have a fetish for kids. Tucker Carlson kept saying that almost every day until the day he was fired. So yeah, in that context, fair. I don't make jokes about trans people, or I pretty much never do.
So, castrate your children. That is the message. And some people, bewilderingly, are following that.
Well, that's why. Now, this is literally the best point he brought up throughout the debate, by the way. Sorry to break it to you. So let's break this down. What does this mean? Well, I'd already considered a long time ago that, yeah, the police should probably stop disproportionately being placed around black neighborhoods. That's also a problem. That leads to incarceration of black people versus white people being probably off from where they should be. So that's a minor issue. Again, it's not going to shape the world. It's not going to put you at a huge disadvantage if you're black, but that's definitely there, right? Now, there's this new thing, which also is, again, a minor issue to some extent, where black people with black-sounding names are less likely to receive callbacks. Now, this is around 30%, and this is only going to apply to people with, like, really black-sounding names. So I'm guessing that's probably going to put maybe 20% of black people at some arguably bad disadvantage. I'm just throwing that 20% in, but yeah, I don't know. And nor does ChatGPT, so fuck, what can I really say? But yeah, to put that into perspective, that's definitely bad. But is it to the point where we straight up can't make jokes about that group? No. Again, trans people are having the existence at risk of being criminalized like every other day, and it's arguable that making jokes about them is too far. I'd say maybe, I don't really do it. I get people who would disagree, but black people? Like, yeah, no fucking way, that goes too far.
You talked about black people and whatnot. Media was also used, jokes were also used to discriminate black people. I'm sure you're familiar with minstrel shows in which people would do blackface.
No.
There was
no idea what that is.
There's a thing called blackface, where white Americans used to dress up and put on a blackface to pretend to be black people and depict black people as lazy degenerates and animals, essentially. It was disgusting and it was bigoted, but it was a joke. But that joke was also done away with because we recognized how harmful those kinds of jokes are as well.
Okay, so this is actually a really good point on how jokes and jokes are two different things. Okay, so these people did blackface as a joke, and the context of that joke was, look at these dirty animals, they look like me with blackface on. I'd love to ask him what exactly is the joke, but why I forgot to do that? Well, here's my racist joke where I put blackface on and made this Kickstarter project gag where I was going to be the black person who sells N-word passes on Kickstarter. So if you're white and you want to have equal rights, well, you just have to pay me $5 for those equal rights. And the joke is the whole N-word pass and how the whole idea around the N-word drama is just a giant joke. So first of all, you can't say it if you're white, but if you do say it, you better say it with a soft A. Which, if you've ever heard black people speak, the reason why they say the N-word like that is because that's just their accent. In fact, every word that ends with ER, that's how they say it. Okay, so the idea is, firstly, if I'm going to say it, I'm going to have to mimic the accent or I'm even more racist. So we're already starting off rough. And secondly, if I'm going to say it, I better have a pass. Like, if you say this shit and you're white, you could get beaten up, but just so you know, the entire backstory of this word and when it's okay to use it is essentially a giant troll. So yeah, I was trolling back. Vegan Games laughed at it, the guy who you were actually on a debate panel with, who pretty much agreed with you in general on racism in America, he laughed at that shit because it was funny. You putting blackface on and saying these dirty N-words, that's not a joke and that's not funny. You see the difference now? Like, this is an important point too, so the whole reason why I think there's this whole panic around the N-word, I think white people should get to say the N-word. Why is that? Well, if you hear a word all the time said around you, now where I live, black people will say the N-word pretty much as often as white people. Someone like me might say the F-word. I say the F-word all the fucking time. And if I have to live in a society where like a group of people around me are saying this word literally multiple times in a sentence, if I end up like I can't say that word, and every time I have to think, oh well, if I just tried speaking like the people around me, I'd get beaten up, and that's supposed to be to punish me for slavery,
It's not
which I
supposed to be
never
for
took
to,
a part on.
it's not really supposed to
It's
be to
like
punish you, and I also sometimes agree that some of that stuff can get kind of cringy. I think that the N-word is generally harmful. I wouldn't really consider it to be like a good word, but I also think that, hold on, wait, please. I also think that if it is a harmful word, that applies also when black people say it as well. So I
Okay,
would be consistent on that position. However, again, there's some pretty big differences here as to why it's not really okay for white people to say the N-word, right? Like white
I
people
think
well, hold on, white people invented this word to specifically
no.
dehumanize black people. So for black people to reappropriate that word, it kind of makes sense, right? Like it makes sense
No,
that white people probably would want to steer clear of that word.
No, like you're saying white people invented this word. Again, it's not white people. I didn't invent this word. I'm from France, by the way. Not that that makes any of a difference. But then when, like, you might say, oh, well, I don't think it's okay for black people to say it either. Sure. But when you look at society in general, like, you cannot, like, when I go to school, I see like most black people will say that word a lot. Like, is it not correct to say, okay, well, if everybody around me is gonna say that all the time, is it not fair to say that if people around me are gonna say that? Because what did society choose?
Dude, this
to make
is
it
literally
It's
this is like if all your friends jumped off a bridge, would you do it too? Like
what is saying
you
a
need to
word? That's
no
not like
because
jumping off a bridge.
I'm saying it's the same kind of example. It's the same thing that parents say. Just if everybody's doing something around you does not just mean it's okay or make it right.
Okay, you see what he did there? I don't think he realized what he did, and I definitely didn't realize it back then. But the first thing he said was that, yeah, it kind of makes sense for black people to reappropriate that word. Then he said, well, if black people are going to jump off a bridge, should you do it too? As in, if black people are racist against black people, should you do it too? No, nobody's fucking arguing that when black people say that word, they're doing something bad because they're being racist. Because you see, the word doesn't mean what it used to, and that's why it's not racist. You could say that nobody should say it. Again, that's how I originally felt. But the fact is, if people are now using that word, how are they using it? To call each other homies, to joke around, all of that. So if I want to use that word, what I mean by that is, I want to say it in the same context that black people around me say it in, because again, I live in the present, not the past. I'm not saying that because white slave owners could say it, I should get to say it. I'm arguing that because people around me say it, I should get to say it. So obviously, if I were to use it in my own words, just like those around me, again, I was advocating for equal rights in that segment there, that would imply I want to say it in the same context. Now, for some fuck all reason, Hunter's conclusion from that was, well, if I say it because of my skin tone, the context when I say it is my skin. Here we fucking go with this shit. No, but how would you determine whether saying this word is wrong or is it not wrong?
I would determine that based on the information that I first gave you, which is that jokes and media can help to normalize certain stereotypes and beliefs, and it can make people who already hold bigoted beliefs more comfortable expressing their bigoted beliefs. Therefore, if you have white people running around saying a slur, but they're saying it because it's a joke, it still has the same negative effect.
It's not even necessarily because it's a joke, because, like, again, why are black people saying the N-word? Are they saying it as a joke?
They're saying it because they reappropriated it. White people created that word to insult black people. So for black people to be using that word to refer to each other, there's a different context there. That's why the history matters.
Yeah, the history matters. That's right. So let's not misrepresent history since it fucking matters so much, shall we? 2 generations ago is not where I live. That's not where you live. You live in the present. The context behind how I use a word that's changed in the past 2 generations is not found in how that word was used before it changed. That makes no fucking sense. You said we created that word, and the funny thing is I don't remember doing that. I don't remember creating anything. I know white people did that, and I'm white people. I mean, I'm a white people. But you see, white people also did slavery, and black people also did slavery. We bought these black slaves from black people, so I guess our slaves are also slave owners. Except when we start talking like that, as if everyone in a race represents that race, that makes no sense. Firstly, because if history is so important, why choose that specific point in history? You want to get the full picture? Okay, well, history is all you need. Well, you know what? I think I just figured it out. Where does our history start? In Africa. That's where the human race started. You see, we're all black, we're all African. I mean, I could use your logic and say that, but I wouldn't really be making sense. I'd be making about as much sense as you. I didn't create that fucking word with its negative connotation. And when I come to the United States and I hear this word all the time, I start repeating it and I'm told that, well, actually, you can't say that because you did this to us, not you specifically, but you as a whole. The message that gives is pretty unambiguously that I share some guilt. Like, you could say no, that's not what you mean, but that is what it fucking means. And that's pretty disrespectful to any white person who disowns slavery and hates it as much as any black person would, meaning pretty much all white people today. That's pretty fucking offensive. So if I pretend I don't have anything to do with the horrible things someone else did, and I therefore act like the ancestors of the victim, now I'm part of the problem. So what this implies is me and my ancestors, we don't just share gene pool. No, it's more than that. We share responsibility through our genes, because that's literally what associating slave owners' use of the N-word to my hypothetical use of the N-word means. If you agree I have nothing more to do with these people than any black person around me does today, this argument just wouldn't make sense, and I challenge anyone to give a single example of how this would ever apply in any other context, or I wouldn't look like a complete asshole for saying this type of shit. And I actually bring up an example later on, but for now let's keep seeing this shit. Because white people back then did these horrible things.
No, it's because of the context of the
appropriate
word. The word was used exclusively by white people to dehumanize black people. So nowadays, when white people use that word about black people, it comes across as, yes, very offensive and yikesy due to the history. But to be honest, I'm not here to argue with you about like the context when it's okay to say the N-word. I don't really actually care that much. I'm talking more specifically about the overall jokes. And I kind of feel like you might be an example of the exact thing I'm talking about, because here you have because you're using the N-word, you're writing the N-word down. You don't think there's anything wrong with saying the N-word, and you also tell racist jokes. Do you think any of that came from maybe the jokes that you were being told that helped normalize that kind of stuff?
Okay, so he kind of tries to pivot from the argument over whether saying that and being white is okay. And now he's on to, well, shit, do I think me thinking it's okay to say that kind of proves this point that me hearing racist jokes led to me believing that it's okay? Like, you legit just said you're not even arguing if it's okay or not, because it doesn't fucking matter to you. And now here you are in the same sentence saying that actually it's bad, and the fact I think it's okay proves your point. So no, that's not how I came to think the way I do. I told him how I came to think the way I do. I was around people who were constantly saying curse words. I started saying them, but for some reason that one was a no-no. And the explanation for this being an exception was a racist explanation, so therefore I started saying it even more than I would have otherwise. Like, I told him that to his face. Pretty sure he just made me repeat myself, which I already do too much, so thank you so fucking much for that. And he's just pivoting to this, I don't fucking know what to call this shithole lame excuse for a point. Bro, what the fuck? I think that came from the fact that I came to America when I was 6 and I saw people around me saying that. And I was like, okay, well, that's a curse word. I love saying curse words. I love being edgy. So let me just repeat that. And then people sat there tell me, oh, well, you're white. You can't say that. And then people told me, oh, well, basically it's because like these white people back then did that. Okay, so since you also have white skin, well, like, why would you say that me saying the N-word because I'm white, there's a different context because I'm white? Well,
because
it's
of the
because you're
history.
appropriating. Yeah, because of the history, but don't you understand that the history has nothing to do with me? So when you, like,
No, the history doesn't have anything to do with you. Wait, hold on. But it has everything to do with the word.
No, but when you assimilate the history of that word within the context of white people to my skin color, like, don't you see how that's offensive and a generalization towards white people? That like, oh, well, if you're white and you say that word, we should just assume that
not to the same extent and not at all the same way in which black people are still currently discriminated against. So here you have historical context playing a role in our general determination that, hey, if you're white, it generally doesn't look good if you're running around screaming the N-word or saying the N-word a bunch. That's just generally not socially acceptable because of the history there.
So I'm sorry if this is bad framing on my end, but I feel like this guy just keeps shifting the goalposts, and maybe that's why I felt confused throughout the whole debate. So here we have me saying that, well, us whites being told we can't say this because of our race, not good, pretty racist. And then he says it's not because of my race, it has everything to do with the word, not my race. Still in the context of generalizing my race to the historical use of that word, and again, with this very specific part of that history in mind. But yeah, not me, not my race, just the fact that the word has a historical connotation which puts my race in a bad light. Pretty much the same fucking thing. And when I elaborate that it's pretty much the same thing, he says, well, it's not as bad as the racism black people face, that you can't say that one word. Not to the same extent and not in the same way. And then he shifts the goalpost to, well, think what you will of it, but if you're white and you start screaming that word, that's generally not well seen. Like, again, nobody's asking to get to do that, because if you're just yelling that word out of nowhere, that's not what black people around you are doing. That's just you being racist at the worst and you trolling around at the very best. Nobody said they don't understand why that's not okay. Why would you say there's any discrimination at all going on if this was actually what we were talking about? Like, you're just assuming, again, that if white people were to speak like black people, they just start being super racist because that's what white people did back then. See how history isn't making your case? Because all history proves is that if you brought a white person back from the past, they'd act that way. Except, again, nobody acts that way now. So again, which one is it?
The second half of my argument is also that that's not discrimination because of the historical context there. And again, you're not being discriminated against as a white person for not being able to say the N-word. Not to mention, you have free speech, so you actually can say the N-word, but then you'll just have to deal with the consequences of that yourself.
So here he goes with this shit. So it's not racist because there's history. Okay, well, if you just said that it's not racist to the same extent or in the same way, now it's not racist at all. Sure. Okay, well, if there's history to justify racial inequality, I guess it's not racist. So when white people enslaved black people, well, you see, since they were just saving black people from getting executed by the tribes who captured them, by instead buying them for labor, well, there you go. I guess this whole racism thing is just something we made up because none of this shit's actually racist. And well, we do have free speech, so I get to say something and be beaten up over it. Well, shit, I guess if Rosa Parks was to sit in the front of a bus today and she got kicked out for the same reason, since the law doesn't actually back the bus driver now, that bus driver's just no longer fucking racist. Is that where we're going to go with this shit? Can't you see, so you're also at the same time going to say, oh, well, yeah, I guess you could say the N-word, you have free speech, but then, like, yeah, you're gonna have to deal with the social consequences. Well, what are the social consequences of that? Well, if I say the N-word, if I'm a black person, people are gonna assume, oh, well, he's, like, but me, if I say a word that, like, I hear people around me saying all the time, it's just normal for people around me to say it, but it's not normal for me to say it, even though people around me are saying it. But what, well, why would that be? It's because of people's subconscious, like, thing that you're talking about, where they go, oh, well, this person, if he acts like me, oh, well, there must be some link. And then they link me to the behavior of people hundreds of years ago. Isn't that the same thing as linking black people? Oh, well, you're black. Oh, well, maybe you shouldn't be in a store because you're going to rob that store. Oh, well, if I'm white and I
it's not,
speak like everybody else.
No,
oh, well, maybe
because one is requiring an assumption. The other is just history. So the other is, here's white people that created this word to be racist against black people. Yours is, well, because black people once committed crime, therefore we're going to assume that black people are then going to commit crime again?
Well, thank you so fucking much. I really appreciate that. So I think Hunter actually proves my point perfectly here. One is an assumption that, well, since white people used to say this in a bad way back when white people were racist, therefore, white people who want to speak like black people today, that's not actually what they're trying to do. They just want to be fucking racist. Meanwhile, the other one is an assumption that, well, since black people in the present have higher rates of crime, let's associate that to black people as well, because shit, why not? If you can associate white people to what other white people did in the past, and on that basis decide that a word that isn't used in the same way anymore is restricted to those whose ancestors did nothing wrong, we sure as hell can associate black people to crime when black people today have a higher rate of crime. And if we did that, that would be pretty fucking racist for the same reason that this whole bullshit around the N-word is racist. There's history to both. I mean, fuck, you could be an even bigger asshole and say, well, you know what? These fucking Mexicans, dude. You heard what Trump said about them being rapists? Yeah, these fuckers better not say the F word unless a white person tells them they can. Otherwise, they'll be beaten to shit for being rapists. But I mean, the law doesn't say that. We just decide that as a society. And so, of course, there's no reason for Mexicans to get mad over that shit. Because, I mean, there's no reason for me to be mad either.
No, in this example of the white person, we already have the white person, quote unquote, committing racism by using the N-word.
And you see, there I made another mistake. I just went straight to, wait, what the fuck, dude? Didn't we already establish that you're not trying to make the point that white people saying that is inherently racist? What I should have said was, well, we already have an example of the black person committing theft. That's history. I could show you the numbers. In fact, that's happening right now. You say one is requiring an assumption, the other is history. Yeah, and your assumption is that history doesn't change. Except that my assumption doesn't even require that assumption to begin with.
One is requiring an assumption, the other is just history. So the other is, here's white people that created this word to be racist against black people. Yours is, well, because black people once committed crime, therefore we're going to assume that black people are then going to commit crime again? No, in this example of the white person, we already have the white person, quote unquote, committing racism by using the N-word.
Okay, so, well, we already have an example of white people committing racism. My point, I don't know how the fuck you didn't catch this, was that we have examples of black people committing theft. We have examples of Mexicans committing rape. The difference is all of that's happening right now. So if we argued on that basis that black people shouldn't go on a store with a hoodie, what are they hiding under that hoodie? Mexicans shouldn't get to say the F word because when's the last time they did that without consent? Not even them specifically, but these other Mexicans, right? Yeah, we'd actually be even more empowered to say that. That would be a stronger argument because it's not even fucking history yet. And don't you see how degrading that is? Because that's actually the only reason why I made that example, just to show you. Yeah, if we do the same shit to other groups, you recognize that it's bad and offensive. But if we do it to you or me, same exact context, except it's not the past, it's the present, there's other people doing horrible things and they happen to share your skin color, so let's just lump you in with them and make this generalization, all of a sudden you get that it's wrong, but you struggle to say how it's different. So here's your distinction, just to summarize. One is history, okay? Historical evidence that white people have done wrong, and an assumption from there that this white person and me share something in common, enough for me to be punished for their behavior. But the other example, you see, is actually just an assumption that, well, there's historical evidence that those groups have done wrong, and we assume that other people of that group share this in common. Like, don't you see how I just repeated the same shit to you twice? So to summarize Hunter's actual substantive points, there are some slight social factors that do play into discrimination that marginalizes black people, such as over-policing in black neighborhoods. This thing that if you're a black person with a very black-sounding name, you're at a slight disadvantage in job applications. And he also mentioned that black people who commit a similar crime to white people are more likely to receive the death penalty. Again, if you're receiving the death penalty, I figure you probably did something to deserve that shit, and if there are crimes that a black person would get a death penalty for, I think the only appropriate response would be to give white people who do the same thing the death penalty as well. And he did also forget to bring up this other point he apparently forgot to bring up, which is about sexism against women as it relates to sexist jokes. So what I would say to that is a lot of people, because I'm around that shit, I've seen this shit at work, a lot of people will make sexist remarks and then laugh. But the thing is, these people aren't fucking joking. Again, I don't think Hunter gets the difference between making a racist statement, making a sexist remark, and then cackling to yourself because you just said something edgy in public, and people making a racist fucking joke. I don't think he gets it, dude. But if you like this video, please consider turning turning the notification bells on for my next shitpost, which will probably be next year, who knows. I don't even know how I managed to make this video with all my homework, but yeah, peace.